That cold evening, no one expected a rusty metal door to change a life. What started as just another abandoned storage unit became a story the whole town tried to explain, and few had the courage to tell. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on the bell. Here we show that behind locked doors and forgotten boxes, there are still human hearts. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan, the engine ticking like a weary heartbeat as she pulled into the lot of Sunset Storage. The sun hung low over the jagged skyline of warehouses and chain-link fences, painting the rows of metal doors in bruised oranges and purples. It was late September in Reno, Nevada, the kind of evening where the desert air cooled fast, carrying the faint tang of asphalt and distant sagebrush. She cut the ignition and sat there, staring at Unit 47, the one she'd won at auction just hours ago for $8.50. Every last cent from her savings, scraped together from odd jobs and the widow's pension that barely covered rent. At 42, Elena felt every ache of the day. The stiffness in her shoulders from hauling boxes at the thrift store, the hollow in her chest where grief had settled since Mark's accident 3 years back. He'd been a mechanic, hands always stained with grease, promising their daughter Sophia a better life someday. Now Sophia was 12, all sharp questions and quiet worries, asking why the lights flickered at home or why Mom skipped meals. Elena had seen the auction flyer online, abandoned units, unclaimed treasures, and thought, why not? It was a gamble, like the slots her neighbors played, but this felt like something real. A chance to flip junk into cash, pay the overdue electric bill, maybe even enroll Sophia in that art class she loved. The lot was emptying out, shadows stretching long across the cracked pavement. A fluorescent light buzzed to life above the office door, casting a harsh glow on the peeling paint of the units. Elena stepped out, her sneakers crunching on gravel, and breathed in the mix of dust and rust, the quiet hum of traffic from the highway beyond the fence. She unlocked the padlock with the key from the auctioneer, the metal cold and gritty under her fingers. It swung open with a reluctant scrape, revealing darkness inside. She flicked on her phone's flashlight, the beam slicing through the gloom. At first it was just shapes, tall, looming forms draped in shadows, the air thick with a stale, briny scent that made her nose wrinkle. Not the usual musty cardboard or mildew of forgotten furniture. This smelled like the ocean, trapped and sour, mixed with something metallic, like old pipes. She stepped closer, heart thudding, and swept the light across the floor. There, against the far wall, was the outline of something massive, a tank, no, an aquarium. Not a small fishbowl, but a giant one, easily 8 feet long, its glass panels fogged and streaked with grime. Tubes and pumps snaked from it like veins, coiled on the concrete floor, and beside it stood shelves of jars, nets, and what looked like lab equipment, beakers, filters, a digital scale coated in dust. Elena's breath caught. Who leaves something like this? She imagined the previous owner, some hobbyist gone bankrupt, or a pet store that folded. But the unit felt too deliberate, too contained, not the chaos of eviction. No scattered clothes, no broken chairs, just this aquatic world, sealed away. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and touched the glass. It was cool, almost chilled, and inside the water, if there was water, held a murky green tint, shadows shifting faintly in the depths. Was that movement a flicker, or just her eyes playing tricks in the dim light? She pulled back, pulse racing. The auctioneer had said it was clean, no liens, but this didn't feel right. What if it was hazardous? Chemicals, or worse, something alive that shouldn't be? Elena thought of Sophia, waiting at home with Mrs. Ramirez next door, probably sketching in her notebook, oblivious to how close they were to losing the apartment. She couldn't afford trouble, not now, when every day was a tightrope walk between despair and determination. The sun dipped lower, the lot growing quieter. only the distant rumble of a truck echoing off the metal doors. Decision time. Open it fully, drag out what she could sell, or lock it up and come back in daylight? Her fingers hovered over the padlock, the weight of it heavy in her palm. Mark would have said dive in, figure it out later. But Mark wasn't here, and Elena had learned caution the hard way. Bills piling up. Collection calls at midnight, the way Sophia's face fell when she promised things she couldn't deliver. She clicked the lock shut, the sound sharp in the evening hush, and leaned against the door for a moment, forehead pressed to the cool metal. Tomorrow. She'd bring tools, maybe ask the facility manager for advice. For now, she needed to get home, make dinner from canned soup, and pretend the world wasn't closing in. The drive back was a blur, streetlights flickering on as night fell. Elena's mind raced, painting pictures in the dark cab. What if the aquarium held rare fish, exotic ones worth thousands? She could sell them, pay off the debts, give Sophia that stability she'd been chasing. Or maybe it was junk, dead pumps, cracked glass, worthless. Worse, what if it was illegal? Smuggled creatures, or some biohazard from a failed experiment? She'd heard stories at the auction house, units with drugs, guns, secrets that swallowed people whole. Her hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. The unpaid bills waited on the kitchen table, red stamps glaring like accusations. Mark's photo smiled from the mantel, his eyes full of that easy confidence she'd lost. By the time she pulled into her driveway, the complex lights buzzed faintly, neighbors' TVs murmuring through thin walls. Sophia was in the living room, curled on the couch with a book, her dark hair falling over her face. "Mom, how'd it go?" she asked, voice small but hopeful. Elena forced a smile, setting down her keys. "Bought a unit. Big one. We'll check it out tomorrow, okay? Maybe there's something cool inside." Sophia nodded, but her eyes searched Eleanor's face, seeing the strain. As they ate, soup and crackers, the steam rising like ghosts, Elena's thoughts drifted back to the unit. That briny smell clung to her clothes, a reminder of the unknown. In bed later, with Sophia asleep down the hall, she lay staring at the ceiling cracks, the fan whirring softly. What lived inside that giant aquarium? Treasure or a trap? The fear twisted in her gut, mingled with a spark of hope. This rusty door might be the break they needed, or the mistake that broke them for good. Sleep came fitfully, dreams of murky waters and echoing locks. Tomorrow she'd face it. For Sophia. For them both. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Elena's apartment, casting pale stripes across the kitchen table where the bills lay untouched. She hadn't slept much, the briny phantom scent haunting her dreams, waves crashing in a locked room, something thrashing just out of sight. Sophia was already up, packing her backpack for school, her small hands folding a sketchpad with care. "You okay, Mum? You look tired." Elena managed a nod, pouring cereal into bowls, the milk sloshing softly. "Just excited about the unit. We'll go after I drop you off." She watched Sophia eat, the girl's spoon scraping the ceramic, and felt that familiar pull, wanting to shield her from the world's sharp edges, the way Mark used to with his steady laugh. But promises needed action now, not memories. After the bus stop, Elena drove back to Sunset Storage, the desert heat already rising, shimmering off the highway like a mirage. The lot was busier in daylight, a few renters hauling boxes, the distant clang of a gate, the air thick with warmed asphalt and faint exhaust. She parked near Unit 47, her pulse quickening as she approached. The metal door gleamed dully under the sun, no longer shadowed but imposing, like a sealed vault. Eleanor had stopped at the hardware store on the way, picking up a pry bar, gloves and a flashlight with fresh batteries, tools for whatever lay inside. Her hands were steadier now, fueled by necessity, but doubt lingered. What if it was nothing, or everything? She fitted the key into the lock, the tumblers clicking with a finality that echoed in the quiet yard. The door rolled up on screeching rollers, sunlight flooding the space, illuminating the giant aquarium in stark relief. It dominated the unit, a monolithic tank of reinforced glass, its frame scarred with scratches and tape residue as if it had been moved in haste. 8 feet long, 4 feet high, filled not with clear water but a murky emerald soup, laced with floating particles that caught the light like suspended dust. Bubbles clung to the sides, and a low hum emanated from a filtration system in the corner, plugged into a dusty extension cord, still running, drawing power all these years. Elena's breath fogged the glass as she leaned in. Fish? No, the shapes were wrong, elongated shadows gliding slowly, too deliberate for simple swimmers. Algae bloomed in patches, and at the bottom a layer of silt stirred faintly as if disturbed by an unseen current. She circled it, gloves on, the concrete floor gritty under her shoes. Shelves lined one wall, rows of glass jars sealed with paraffin, labelled in faded marker. Sample 14, pH log, feeding chart. Beside them a notebook, its cover warped from humidity, and a stack of file folders tied with string. Nets of varying sizes hung from hooks, and a workbench held rusted tools, pH meters, tweezers, a digital timer frozen at 0000. The briny smell was stronger now, mingled with a sharper tang, like chemicals or decay. Elena's stomach twisted. This wasn't a hobbyist's setup. It felt clinical, purposeful. A lab abandoned mid-experiment. Kneeling, she tugged at a loose panel on the tank's base, an access hatch, perhaps for maintenance. It gave with a pop, revealing a tangle of hoses and a small pump, still dripping condensation. Inside the murk, the shadows resolved, not fish, but eels, dozens of them slick and sinuous, coiling through the water with eerie grace. Moray eels, she thought, recalling a documentary Sophia had watched. Fierce, secretive creatures from coral reefs, their mouths gaping in perpetual threat. But these seemed off. Larger than expected, their skins mottled with unusual patterns, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. Were they exotic imports, mutated? The thought chilled her. She'd read about black market pet trade. Rare species smuggled in units like this only to be seized by authorities. Elena's hand hovered near the notebook, then pulled it free. Pages yellowed, filled with meticulous handwriting, dates spanning 2 years, notes on acclimation, growth rates, anomalous behaviors. Entries like Subject 7 aggressive, isolated, and water salinity elevated. Monitor for stress. Sketches dotted the margins, diagrams of the tank, chemical formulas, a rough map of what looked like a coastline. The last entry, dated 3 years ago. Final batch stable, delivery pending. If anything happens, contact Dr. Hale. No name, just initials, RV, and a phone number smudged but legible. Elena's mind reeled. Delivery? To whom? A research lab? A collector? Or something shadier, like an underground aquarium trade? She set the notebook down, heart pounding, and glanced at the door. The yard outside bustled innocently. A man in overalls sweeping near the office. But isolation pressed in, the unit's walls closing like the tank's glass. What if these eels were protected, endangered? Releasing them could be a crime. Selling them, disastrous. And the power bill? How long had this been running? Siphoning electricity unnoticed. Elena imagined the auctioneer shrugging it off, but she couldn't. Not with Sophia's future on the line. She needed help, someone to make sense of this without dragging in cops just yet. As if summoned, footsteps crunched outside. "Everything all right in there?" A voice, gravelly and kind, from a man in his 60s, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. He was the maintenance guy, Elena recalled. Mr. Torres from the office sign-in sheet. Short, weathered, with a faded tattoo peeking from his sleeve. He peered in, eyes widening at the tank. "Whoa, you drew the long straw on that auction, huh? Name's Luis. Saw you lock up last night. Looked spooked. Elena straightened, wiping her palms on her jeans, the vulnerability hitting her like the heat. It's, not what I expected. An aquarium, but huge. And these things inside, eels, I think. The notebook mentions some doctor. You ever see the owner? Luis stepped closer, careful not to touch anything, his face creasing with recognition. Yeah, rented it to a guy a few years back. Quiet type. Came in a van loaded with gear. Said he was a biologist, studying marine life or something. Paid on time, then poof, gone. No forwarding, no notice. We auctioned it after the lien. He squinted at the jars. That smells like a research setup. My nephew's in aquatics at the university. He'd know. But careful, these could be special stock. Illegal imports happen around here, with the ports not far. The word illegal hung heavy, stirring Elena's fears. She thought of Sophia's drawings of ocean scenes, innocent and bright, clashing with this hidden world of secrets. What should I do? Call someone? Luis rubbed his chin, glancing at the eel's lazy undulations. First, document it. Photos, notes, cover yourself. Then maybe that number in the book, but if it's hot, better get advice before you stir the pot. I've seen units like this bite back. Cops. Fines. Worse. He paused, meeting her eyes with quiet empathy. You look like you could use a hand. I get off at 3. We can check the rest together. Gratitude swelled in Elena's chest, unexpected in this cold expanse of metal and mystery. For the first time since Mark, someone saw her struggle without pity. She nodded, pocketing the notebook. Thanks. I can't mess this up. Not for my daughter. As Luis headed back to work, the hum of the filter resumed its steady drone, the eels circling like unspoken questions. Elena locked the door partially, the sun climbing higher, baking the lot. The reveal had cracked open more than the unit. It unearthed a moral rift, pulling her toward truth or retreat. By afternoon, with help or alone, she delved deeper into the jars, the files, the life that had been abandoned here, mirroring her own fragile one. The eels watched from their depths, patient and unknowable, as hope and dread coiled tighter in her heart. The afternoon sun beat down on Sunset Storage like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze that distorted the rows of units into wavering mirages. Elena sat on the tailgate of her sedan, the metal hot through her jeans, flipping through the notebook's pages under the shade of a faded awning. The handwriting grew more frantic toward the end, scrawled notes about unforeseen mutations and containment breach risks, underlined with shaky lines. Dr. Hale's name appeared twice more, linked to a lab in San Diego, and there were receipts taped in, shipments of live specimens from overseas ports, dates blurring into the months before the unit's abandonment. Her fingers traced the ink, the paper crinkling softly as doubt gnawed deeper. This wasn't just a forgotten hobby. It was a fragment of someone's unraveling life, and now it tangled with hers. Luis returned at 3 sharp, his work truck rumbling to a stop nearby. Toolbox clanking as he hopped out. He carried 2 bottled waters, condensation beading on the plastic, and handed one to Elena with a nod. Hotter than Hades out here. Let's not rush. Better to see clear than sorry. His voice was steady, laced with the quiet authority of someone who'd fixed leaks and broken dreams in places like this for decades. Elena appreciated that. No judgments, just practical steps. They unlocked Unit 47 together, the door groaning upward, releasing a fresh wave of briny air that carried hints of algae and something sharper, like iodine from a doctor's kit. Inside, the aquarium's hum persisted, a low vibration underfoot that set Elena's teeth on edge. The eels had grown more active in the heat, their bodies twisting in lazy figure eights, mouths opening to reveal rows of needle teeth. Luis knelt by the tank, peering through the grime without touching, his face tightening. Moray's all right, but look at the colors. Those stripes aren't natural. Could be a hybrid strain, bred for research. My nephew deals with this, says the trade's dicey. Folks smuggle them for private collectors, or worse, for testing stuff that shouldn't see daylight. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow, and gestured to the shelves. Start with the jars. If they're samples, we need to know what's cooking before it cooks us. Elena's pulse quickened as she gloved up again, the latex snapping against her skin. The first jar lifted easily, its weight surprising. Cool glass filled with a viscous liquid, a single eel curled inside, smaller than the tank's inhabitants, its body pale and translucent, veins pulsing faintly. A label read, Control Group, Pre-Exposure. Exposure to what? She set it down carefully, the thud echoing in the confined space, and reached for the file folders. Dust puffed into the air like smoke signals, the folders brittle under her fingers. Inside, shipping manifests, veterinary logs, emails printed on yellowing paper. One caught her eye, a correspondence with Dr. Hale. RV confirms viability for Phase 2 trials. Ethical concerns noted but funding secured. Avoid ports with customs scrutiny. RV, the initials from the notebook. Elena's mouth went dry, the water bottle forgotten in her hand. This guy's name. Robert Vance. It says here he was consulting for a biotech firm. She read aloud, her voice barely above the filter's drone. Project Aquaguard. Something about resilient marine species for coastal defense. But the notes. Behavioral anomalies post-exposure. What exposure? Images flashed in her mind. Labs with bubbling vats, scientists in masks, creatures altered for purposes she couldn't fathom. And Vance, a photo clipped to a contract showed a man in his 50s, gaunt and intense, eyes shadowed like Elena's own after too many sleepless nights. Luis flipped through another folder, his brow furrowing. Look at this. Payment stubs to a moving company, dated right before he vanished, and a lease termination notice from the facility unsigned. Guy bailed in a hurry, left the power on like he meant to come back. He paused, meeting her gaze, the fluorescent light from the doorway casting harsh shadows on his lined face. Elena, this smells like trouble. If it's experimental stock, the feds could seize the whole unit. Fines, jail time if you're seen as harboring it, but if it's legit abandoned property... He trailed off, rubbing his neck. You auctioned it fair. Could be yours to claim. Sell the equipment legal-like, but those eels, they're alive, thinking, maybe suffering. Can't just flush 'em. The moral weight settled on her like the desert heat, heavy and unyielding. Elena thought of Sophia, sketching fish in her room, innocent lines curving like waves. What kind of mother exposed her child to this? Potential danger, or a windfall that could rewrite their story? She imagined the cops arriving, yellow tape across the door, questions about how a thrift store worker ended up with a biolab in her storage unit, or worse, whoever Vance owed money to, or the firm hunting their lost project. Her hand trembled as she opened a final jar, this one heavier, the liquid cloudy with sediment. Inside, not an eel, but a cluster of eggs, gelatinous orbs pulsing with tiny shadows, life in suspension. Oh, God, she whispered, sealing it quickly. They're breeding. This isn't over. It's ongoing. Luis placed a hand on her shoulder, light but grounding. Breathe. We shut it down for now. Unplug the pump, secure the jars, then call that number for Hale. Get the truth without jumping to sirens. His empathy cut through the panic, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this industrial limbo. He'd lost his wife to cancer years back, he mentioned quietly, fixing units to keep the grief at bay. Seen enough locked doors to know some hide second chances, not just skeletons. They worked methodically, photographing everything, the tank's serial numbers, the eel's eerie dance, the document's damning details. The sun slanted lower, painting the unit in golden streaks, but the air grew thicker with unspoken fears. As they locked up, Elena pocketed her phone, the images burning like evidence. Driving home, the highway blurred past, her mind a whirlpool, return it all, walk away clean, or dig deeper, claim a piece for Sophia's sake. The briny scent clung to her skin, a ghost of choices yet to be made. That evening, as she tucked Sophia in, reading a story of ocean adventures, the words felt hollow. The giant aquarium wasn't just a find, it was a crossroads, demanding courage she wasn't sure she had. But with Luis's number in her pocket and the truth inching closer, retreat felt less like safety and more like surrender. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories of courage in forgotten places can travel. The next morning dawned with a deceptive calm. The Reno sky, a pale wash of blue streaked with contrails, as if the world above ignored the turmoil brewing below. Elena woke to the sound of Sophia humming in the kitchen, a soft melody from her art class that cut through the apartment's thin walls like a fragile thread of normalcy. She lay there for a moment, the sheets tangled around her legs, replaying the previous day's revelations, the jars of translucent eels, the cryptic emails, Vance's haunted photo staring out from the folder. Sleep had been shallow, haunted by dreams of coiling shadows and locked doors that wouldn't budge. The briny scent seemed embedded in her pores, a constant whisper of the unit's secrets. Over breakfast, oatmeal stirred hastily, steam rising in lazy curls, Eleanor watched Sophia doodle on a napkin, sketching a fantastical sea creature with swirling fins. "What's that one?" she asked, forcing lightness into her voice. Though her hands shook as she poured milk, Sophia glanced up, eyes bright. "A guardian eel protects the ocean from bad stuff." The irony twisted in Elena's gut. If only it were that simple. She dropped Sophia at school with a quick hug, the girl's backpack thumping against her side, and headed straight for Sunset Storage. The lot was quiet mid-morning, the sun already warming the metal doors to a dull glow, casting long shadows that danced like eels in shallow water. Luis was waiting near Unit 47, leaning against his truck with a thermos of coffee, his face etched with the same quiet resolve from yesterday. "Morning," he said, handing her a spare glove from his toolbox. "Slept on it?" "Barely." Elena unlocked the door, the scrape of metal on metal echoing like a warning. The unit's interior felt more oppressive in the daylight, the aquarium's glass reflecting fractured sunlight that played across the concrete floor. The filter's hum had quieted overnight. They'd unplugged it to conserve power, but the water inside stirred faintly from residual currents, the eels gliding with predatory patience. "I called the number last night. Voicemail for a Dr. Elena Hale, marine biologist, San Diego, left a message about the unit. No details. She hasn't called back." Luis nodded, pulling out a multi-tool from his belt. "Smart, keeping it vague. Let's inventory the rest, no opening anything sealed till we know more." They moved methodically, the air thick with dust motes swirling in the beams from the open door. Elena catalogued the workbench, vials of powdered supplements labeled Growth Enhancer, Restricted, a logbook detailing feeding schedules that spiked in urgency toward the end. Double rations, aggression rising. One entry chilled her, Vance to Hale. Samples show 30% size increase, ethical review pending. If project folds, destroy all. Destroy. The word hung in the humid air, implying not just abandonment, but erasure. Elena's mind raced to darker places, government contracts gone awry, experiments pushed too far in the name of defense. She'd Googled Project Aquaguard on her phone last night. Vague hits on biotech firms developing resilient species for polluted waters. but whispers in forums about military applications, bioengineered guardians for harbors. Was Vance fleeing whistleblower status or covering tracks after something escaped control? As they shifted a crate from under the shelves, wooden, splintered, marked equipment backup, a loose panel gave way, spilling contents onto the floor. Not tools, but more documents, faded blueprints of the tank, schematics for filtration systems laced with sensors, and a personal letter handwritten on lined paper. Elena knelt, her knees grinding into the grit, and unfolded it carefully. "Robert, if you're reading this, I've had to leave. The firm's pressuring for results we can't ethically deliver. The eels, they're not what we thought. Exposure to the compound changed them, smarter, stronger, but volatile. Hale knows the risks. She's the only one who can help relocate them safely. Don't let them suffer, forgive me. M. Who? A colleague? A lover?" The letter was dated the same week Vance vanished, postmarked from a Reno motel. Eleanor's breath hitched, the paper trembling in her gloved hands. This wasn't smuggling. It was a moral collapse, a scientist's conscience cracking under corporate weight. The eels weren't prizes or pests. They were lives altered and adrift, their anomalies a testament to human hubris. Luis read over her shoulder, his exhale heavy. Christ, sounds like Vance bolted to protect this mess, or himself. He gestured to the tank, where an eel pressed against the glass, its mottled skin rippling, eyes locking onto Elena's with an unnerving intelligence. Those aren't pets. If they're modified, touching this could mean labs, quarantines, the works. You thinking of walking? The question pierced her, stirring the crossroads she'd dreaded. Elena stood, pacing the narrow space, the walls pressing in like the tank's confines. Call the police. They'd seize everything, auction scraps after investigation, leaving her with nothing but questions and potential blame for not reporting sooner. Pretend ignorance, sell the equipment piecemeal? Tempting, but the eel's gaze accused her, echoing Sophia's trusting eyes. Or pursue the truth, track Hale, uncover Vance's fate, maybe turn this into restitution for whatever compound had twisted these creatures. But that meant risk, legal entanglements, shadowy firms, the fear of retaliation from whoever hunted loose ends. "I can't just end them," Elena said finally, voice cracking. The compassion she'd buried under grief surged up, raw and insistent. Mark had taught her that, fix what's broken, don't look away. Sophia draws oceans full of life. If these are suffering because someone played God, I have to do right by them. By us. Tears pricked her eyes, unbidden, as the unit's shadows deepened with the shifting sun. Luis squeezed her arm, his touch paternal, steady. "Then we dig careful. I'll call my nephew at the university, discreet consult on the species. You follow up with Hale, document every step, it's your shield." He paused, vulnerability softening his features. "Lost my boy to the service years back. Watched him wrestle choices like this. Courage isn't charging in, it's choosing the hard path when fear screams run." They spent the next hour sealing the spill, photographing the letter, the hum of Elena's phone recording notes like a confessional. Outside, the lot stirred, a renter's truck rumbling past, oblivious. But inside, the air crackled with escalation. As they locked up, Eleanor's phone buzzed, an unknown number. Hale or something worse? She stared at the screen, heart slamming, the desert wind whispering through the fence like a held breath. The deeper truth was unfolding, not as treasure, but as a mirror to her own unfinished life, demanding she choose integrity over escape, for the eels, for Sophia, for the woman she'd become in the wake of loss. The door clanged shut, but the questions coiled on, alive and insistent. Elena hesitated outside Unit 47, the phone's vibration buzzing against her palm like a trapped insect. The desert wind tugged at her hair, carrying the faint whine of a distant siren from the highway, as if the world sensed the precipice she teetered on. Luis paused beside her, toolbox slung over his shoulder, his eyes flicking to the screen. "Take it," he said softly, voice steady amid the rising heat. "But speaker, I'm right here." She nodded, thumb hovering, then swiped to answer, the connection crackling like static over water. "Hello?" Elena's voice came out smaller than intended, laced with the unit's lingering brine. A pause, then a woman's tone, clipped and cautious, filtered through the speaker. "This is Dr. Elena Hale. You left a message about a storage unit in Reno? Robert Vance's old space?" The name hit like a cold current, confirming the shadows in the documents. Elena glanced at Luis, who leaned in closer, the sun etching lines across his weathered face. "Yes," she replied, stepping toward her car for a sliver of shade, the gravel crunching underfoot. "I bought it at auction. There's an aquarium inside, eels, and your name in a notebook, papers about a project, AquaGuard." Another silence, heavier this time, broken by a faint rustle on the line, like papers shifting in a lab. "God, I thought it was gone for good. Vance disappeared 3 years ago, right after we parted ways on the research. He was unstable toward the end, paranoid about the firm pulling strings. What exactly did you find?" Elena's free hand gripped the car door, the metal scorching her skin, grounding her as memories flooded. Sophia's innocent sketches, Mark's grease-stained hands promising fixes that never came. She couldn't lie, not now, with the eel's intelligent stares etched in her mind. The tank's full of mores, modified ones from what the notes say, jars with samples, logs about exposure to some compound, a letter from someone named M, mentioning ethical issues and relocation. It feels wrong, like they shouldn't be there. Hale's exhale was audible, ragged. That's me before I went back to Hale. We were partners, Robert and I. The project was for environmental resilience, eels engineered to detect pollutants in coastal waters, for defense agencies. But the compound, it accelerated growth, altered behaviors. They became too aggressive, too aware. Vance wanted to push it. I pulled the plug. He took the specimens, hid them in that unit, planning to sell or destroy them. I urged him to surrender them to a sanctuary, but he vanished. Assumed he ran afoul of the firm or himself. The words uncoiled in Elena's chest, twisting fear into something sharper, responsibility for lives not her own, born of ambition's fallout. Luis met her eyes, nodding encouragement, his presence a quiet anchor in the swirling lot. A truck rumbled past, kicking up dust that stung her eyes. Mirroring the blur of tears, she blinked back. "So they're not dangerous, just changed." "Not inherently," Hale said, her voice softening with regret, "but unregulated, yes. The firm, Aquatic Innovations, might still be looking, if they trace it back. Legal battles, seizures. You need to document everything and contact the Marine Mammal Commission. Anonymously, if you must. I'll email protocols for safe extraction, get them to a vetted facility. Vance owed me that much. Now you do too, for keeping them alive this long." Elena swallowed, the phone slick in her sweat-damp hand. "I have a daughter. This was supposed to be a way out. Debts, a better life, not this mess." The confession slipped out, raw, the industrial yard fading as vulnerability cracked her open. Sophia's face flashed, wide eyes at bedtime stories, trusting despite the flickering lights. Hale paused, empathy threading her tone. "I get it. Lost my funding, my marriage over that project. But walking away? That's what broke Vance. Do the right thing. It's harder, but it rebuilds you." The call ended with a click, leaving Elena staring at the screen. Hale's promised email pinging almost immediately. Attachments on eel care, legal contacts, a blurred photo of Vance and Hale in lab coats, smiles strained even then. Luis whistled low, wiping his brow with his rag. "Heavy load. She's legit. Matches what the nephew texted me this morning. Those eels are hybrids, protected under some Wildlife Act now. Selling's off the table. It's sanctuary or surrender. He leaned against the unit door, the metal creaking faintly, his gaze steady. You heard her. Crossroads, Elena. Cops mean quick end, but questions. Sanctuary? Takes time, heart. What feels right for that girl of yours? She slid into the car, the vinyl seat sticking to her legs, the engine coughing to life amid the haze. Driving away, the storage lot shrank in the rear view, but the weight grew. The eels as unwitting witnesses to human folly, Vance's ghost in every scribbled note. Home was a blur, picking up Sophia from school, her chatter about a class project on sea life filling the cab like sunlight. But as they ate sandwiches at the scarred kitchen table, Elena's mind churned. The email burned in her pocket. Hale's words echoed Mark's old mantra, fix it right, or don't fix it at all. That evening, after Sophia's homework, Elena spread the documents on the coffee table, the apartment's single lamp casting warm pools over the papers. Sophia peered over, curious. Mom, what's all this? Looks like a treasure map. Elena forced a smile, folding a blueprint away. More like a puzzle, one we might solve together. But alone later, phone in hand, she dialed the commission number, voice trembling as she described the find. Anonymous, Hale's guidance her shield. The operator's calm assurance promised a team in days. Inspection, relocation, no charges if reported promptly. Relief washed over her, mingled with grief for Vance's unraveling path, the eel's silent suffering. Yet doubt lingered as she lay awake, the ceiling fan whirring like the filter's forgotten hum. What if the firm came knocking, or Vance's family searching for closure? Louise texted, Nephew confirms, Sanctuary and Tahoe. We'll transport safe, proud of you. His support, unasked, mended a fracture in her isolation, a quiet alliance forged in rust and resolve. By dawn, resolve hardened. She'd return to the unit tomorrow, prepare for the team's arrival, clean the tank, log final notes, honor the lives within. The moral rift narrowed, not treasure, but a test of integrity, pulling her from survival's edge toward something steadier. Sophia stirred in her room, dreaming of guardians. Elena rose, the first light filtering through blinds, ready to choose compassion over fear. The aquarium's secrets were yielding, not to greed, but to the courage of opening what others had sealed shut. The days blurred into a tense rhythm after the call, the Reno autumn deepening with cooler winds that rattled the chain-link fence around Sunset Storage like impatient fingers. Elena moved through her routine, dropping Sophia at school, shifting boxes at the thrift store, evenings poring over the documents under the apartment's dim lamp, but the unit pulled at her like an undertow. The eels haunted her thoughts, their coiling forms a metaphor for the twists in her own life. Mark's sudden absence, the endless scramble for stability, now this unexpected guardianship thrust upon her. Hale's email had arrived with attachments, protocols for safe handling, contacts at the Marine Mammal Commission, and Elena had followed through. Her anonymous report met with efficient bureaucracy, a team scheduled for Friday, 2 days away. No charges, they assured, if everything checked out clean. But clean felt illusory, the briny scent still clinging to her clothes like a confession. Luis became her steady shadow in the preparations, arriving each afternoon with his toolbox and quiet wisdom, the two of them transforming the unit from a shadowed vault into a temporary haven. The sun slanted through the open door in golden shafts, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny sea creatures, while the distant hum of traffic provided a mundane soundtrack to their work. They cleaned the tank's exterior with vinegar-soaked rags, the glass emerging clearer, revealing the eel's mottled patterns in stark detail, stripes of iridescent blue and black, eyes that seemed to track their movements with unnerving focus. Like they're judging us, Elena murmured one afternoon, her arm elbow-deep in soapy water. the chill seeping into her bones. Louise chuckled softly, adjusting a loose hose with pliers, the metallic clink echoing off the walls. Maybe they are. Vance gave 'em smarts we didn't bargain for. He'd shared more about his nephew, a marine biologist at UNR, who confirmed the hybrid's origins. A failed, DARPA-funded experiment. Eels bioengineered for toxin detection, but abandoned when side effects, heightened aggression, rapid adaptation, raised red flags. No outright danger to humans, but illegal to possess without permits. Vance was the fall guy, Louise added, wiping his hands on his rag, the fabric stained with grime. Hale's clean. She went public with concerns after he vanished. Firm buried it. But this could reopen the file. If anyone cares about a single mom's storage unit. The words stirred Elena's fears anew, a quiet dread that coiled tighter with each revelation. What if the commission found traces of the compound, linking it back to her? Or worse, if Aquatic Innovations caught wind, private investigators, veiled threats, dragging her into a web she couldn't escape. She imagined Sophia's face crumpling at a courtroom door, the girl's dreams of art classes shattered by scandal. Nights were the worst, lying awake to the whir of the fan, replaying the letter from M. Hale herself, it turned out, her real name Marina, before the divorce that mirrored Vance's unraveling. The deeper truth had emerged in fragments. Vance, a once idealistic researcher, had smuggled the eels to Reno after the project's shutdown, intending a sanctuary run. But paranoia gripped him, fears of corporate spies, ethical betrayals, and he holed up in the unit, powering it remotely until burnout or despair claimed him. No body found, just rumors of a man matching his description washed up on Tahoe shores, ruled accidental drowning. A human tragedy, unfinished and adrift, much like Elena's own widowhood. Thursday brought escalation, the moral crossroads sharpening into a blade. As they inventoried the final crates, sealing jars in padded boxes, labeling each with photos and notes, Elena's phone buzzed with an unknown caller. She froze, sponge dripping suds onto the concrete, the air thick with vinegar and salt. "Don't answer," Louise advised, but curiosity won. She stepped outside, the yard's fluorescent lights flickering on early against gathering clouds. "This is Elena Ramirez, regarding the Reno unit," a smooth male voice said, no preamble. "Aquatic Innovations. We understand you have property that belongs to us." Her heart slammed, the phone nearly slipping from her grasp. "How? Hale's leak? The commission's slip?" "I bought it legally at auction. It's equipment, nothing more." A pause, laced with false warmth. "Equipment worth millions in IP. Return it quietly and we'll compensate. Say, enough to clear your debts. Keep digging, and things get complicated. For you, for your family." The threat landed like ice water, visions flashing, strangers at her door, Sophia's school disrupted, the fragile life they'd built dissolving. Elena's voice trembled but held. "I'm reporting it to authorities. It's not yours anymore." She hung up, breath ragged, the wind whipping dust across the lot like scattered secrets. Rushing back inside, she told Louise, his face darkening as he pocketed his tools. "Bastards, probably monitoring auctions. Call the commission, update 'em. This changes the play." They did, the operator's voice calm but urgent. Enhanced security for the pickup, possible federal involvement now. As dusk fell, painting the units in bruised purples, Elena locked the door with finality, the padlock clicking like a vow. Driving home, the highway lights blurred through unshed tears, the firm's call a siren song of easy money clashing against her hardening resolve. Temptation whispered, "Take the deal, sell the eels under the table, fund Sophia's future without the mess." But the eel's gaze, Vance's ghost, Hale's regret, they anchored her. Integrity wasn't abstract. It was choosing the narrow path, protecting not just her daughter, but the dignity of what had been forsaken. That night, over canned chili at the kitchen table, Sophia chatted about her ocean project, oblivious. Elena listened, her hand absently stroking the girl's hair, the warmth a talisman against the chill. Later, alone, she drafted an email to Hale, thanking her, sharing the threat, affirming the handover. "This isn't about treasure," she wrote, "it's about not letting fear win." Sleep came easier, dreams of clear waters where eels swam free, not coiled in shadows. Friday dawned crisp, the team arriving at noon. 2 vans, unmarked, with techs in khakis and clipboards, their boots echoing in the yard. Luis stood sentinel, while Elena watched from her car, heart pounding as they dismantled the tank. Gentle nets, oxygenated crates, the eels transferred with clinical care. No incidents, just quiet efficiency, the briny air dispersing like a sigh. The lead tech nodded to her afterward, handing a receipt. "Appreciate the report. Sanctuary in Monterey, they'll thrive." No questions about the firm, protocols in place. As the vans pulled away, Unit 47 stood empty, its vast space echoing with absence. The shelves bare, concrete swept clean, sunlight flooding where shadows once ruled. Elena lingered, touching the wall where the tank had been, the cool metal, a echo of choices made. Luis clapped her shoulder. "You did right. Dinner sometime, my treat, celebrate the empty door." She smiled, genuine for the first time in weeks. The weight lifting like fog over the desert. The honest path wasn't without scars. The firm's shadow might linger, legal papers to sign, but it forged something stronger. Clarity, allies, a life no longer defined by desperation. Driving to pick up Sophia, the sun warm on her arm, Elena felt the stirrings of rebuilding, not from junk, but from courage. The aquarium's legacy wasn't destruction, but a quiet redemption, doors opened to light instead of locked in regret. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena reach more people who still believe in second chances. Months passed like the slow drift of silt settling in still water, the Reno winter yielding to a tentative spring that softened the edges of the desert skyline. Elena's life, once a relentless current of survival, began to steady, eddying into rhythms she hadn't known since before Mark's accident. The thrift store job evolved. Her manager, noticing her quiet focus, promoted her to inventory lead. The extra hours funding Sophia's art classes without the gnawing fear of overdraft fees. The apartment's lights no longer flickered. Bills arrived, stamped paid. A small victory that felt monumental under the kitchen's warm bulb. Sophia bloomed too, her sketches evolving from fantastical guardians to intricate ocean scenes. Inspired by the stories Elena shared in veiled terms, tales of hidden lives and choices that set them free. The commission's team had taken the eels without fanfare. Their relocation to a Monterey sanctuary confirmed in a terse follow-up email from Hale. No reprisals from Aquatic Innovations materialized. Perhaps the firm's shadows preferred obscurity, or the federal nudge Elena's anonymous report triggered kept them at bay. Legal papers arrived by certified mail, waivers, affidavits declaring the unit's contents abandoned property. Her role as good faith reporter absolved. She sold the salvaged equipment piecemeal, the filtration pumps to a local pet store, the workbench to a hobbyist online, the glass jars repurposed for a community center's science club. The proceeds weren't riches, barely 3,000 after fees, but they covered Sophia's braces and seeded a small savings account, Elena's first in years. It was enough to breathe, to plan beyond the next meal. Luis wove into their lives like a reliable undercurrent, his invitation to dinner evolving into weekly rituals, barbecues at his modest ranch house on the outskirts, where the air smelled of mesquite smoke and blooming creosote, Sophia giggling as he taught her to fix a leaky faucet with oversized wrenches. He never pried about the unit, But his presence anchored Elena. Conversations over cooling coffee on his porch, the sunset painting the distant warehouses in fading gold, sharing losses that mirrored her own. His wife gone, his son overseas, her husband lost, her daughter, the light pulling her forward. "You opened that door," he said one evening, the stars pricking the velvet sky, "and didn't let the dark win. That's more than most manage." Yet the aquarium's echo lingered, a subtle current beneath the surface calm. Elena dreamed occasionally of coiling shadows, waking with the phantom briny tang on her tongue, or the hum of the filter vibrating in her chest. Hale reached out once more, a handwritten note tucked into an envelope of sanctuary updates, photos of the eels in vast sunlit tanks, their mottled forms gliding with renewed vigor. "They adapted faster than expected," she wrote. "Vance would have been proud. Or relieved. Thank you for giving them a second chance." Elena framed one photo quietly, hanging it in the hallway beside Mark's, a silent testament to unfinished lives redeemed. Spring deepened, the desert air warming with the scent of wild mustard blooming along the highway, and Elena found herself drawn back to Sunset Storage. It had been 4 months since the vans departed, the unit's lien cleared, hers to renew or relinquish. She parked in the lot one overcast afternoon, the pavement still radiating faint heat from the morning sun, the chain-link fence humming softly in the breeze. The facility felt unchanged, rows of metal doors glinting dully, a distant clang from the office, the quiet underscore of traffic beyond. Unit 47 stood unassuming now, its surface etched with faint scratches from the tank's removal, the padlock new and gleaming under the diffused light. She unlocked it with the spare key she'd kept, the tumblers clicking smoothly, a far cry from the rusty scrape of that first evening. The door rolled up on well-oiled tracks, revealing emptiness, a vast, echoing space of bare concrete and lingering shadows where the aquarium had loomed. Sunlight poured in, unfiltered, illuminating scuff marks on the floor like faded footprints, dust gathering in quiet corners, no briny chill, no hum, just the faint metallic tang of rust and the warm asphalt wafting from outside. Elena stepped inside, her sneakers echoing softly, and ran a hand along the wall, feeling the cool metal yield slightly under her palm. The void was symbolic, a monument to the turning point. What had filled it with fear and unknown now cleared the way for light. Sophia waited in the car, sketching idly, but Elena lingered, breathing in the transformed air. Here she'd faced the moral rift, torn between easy escape and the hard truth of responsibility. The eels, Vance's tragedy, the firm's veiled threat, they'd tested her, pulling at the threads of her grief until she wove them into resolve. No grand fortune, but a quiet justice, lives preserved, conscience intact. A community forged from unlikely allies. Luis had texted that morning, inviting them for a hike tomorrow, his words a gentle current carrying her forward. She thought of Mark, his easy confidence in her strength, and whispered to the empty space, "We made it through." Locking up, the padlock's click felt like closure, not confinement. As she drove away, the lot shrinking in the mirror, a call came. Hale, updating on the eel's integration, her voice warm with shared victory. Elena smiled, the road ahead straightening, the desert horizon promising not just survival, but a life rebuilt on courage. The doors we choose to open, she reflected, don't always lead to treasure, but they always lead to who we become. In the quiet aftermath of that giant aquarium, Eleanor stood taller, her heart no longer adrift in murky depths, but navigating toward open waters, where hope coiled not in fear, but in the steady light of integrity. Subscribe for more stories of compassion, justice, and redemption. Thank you for watching The Case of Single Mom Bought a Storage Unit with a Giant Aquarium. What lived inside? See you in the next one.